Before we dive into this week's episode of Speed Talking, a very quick intro with some speed history. You may notice that we chose to say Saigon instead of Ho Chi Minh. Vietnam's former capital has dual names, Ho Chi Minh City and Saigon, causing confusion among residents and visitors. The city's official name is Ho Chi Minh City, a reflection of its historical significance linked to the Vietnam War. The war, involving the North and South of Vietnam, culminated in 1975 with the North's victory and the renaming of Saigon to Ho Chi Minh City in honor of a Communist Party leader. The name change marked the North's success and prompted some residents to flee. Today, the two names are used interchangeably across Vietnam, symbolizing the nation's resilience in moving beyond its wartime history. We chose to say Saigon because that's what most locals use, not due to any political connotations, but simply because it's shorter and easier to say. Do as the locals do.
Welcome to Speed Talking with Fora, a weekly debrief that keeps you up to date on the latest trends in travel. Here's your host, Henley Vazquez.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Speed Talking with Fora. This week, we are talking about the Michelin Guide's arrival to Vietnam. So I was in Vietnam back in February. Everybody was talking about the fact that the Michelin Guide was going to come out and be featuring restaurants in Hanoi and Saigon. This has happened. And so we thought it would be fun to talk about what does it mean when Michelin shows up in a destination where they haven't been before? Like, first of all, I was shocked because we think of Vietnam as such a culinary destination that Michelin hadn't been there. But now they've shown up. So let's go through the stats first of what they said, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we think this means for this country as a culinary destination and like what it means for countries in general when Michelin shows up at their door. Here's what happened. They ranked four restaurants with one Michelin star, 29 Bib Gourmand, which is an inspector's favorite for outstanding culinary experience, but at a moderate price, and 70 with street food and sort of more local cuisine. So you can see where it really veered more towards the regular person stuff versus the really high-end restaurants. This is a huge deal, and we know what a cult following Michelin has. So what do we think this is going to happen? Let's break it down into the pros and cons. I mean, the pros are obvious. This is international recognition. Suddenly, Vietnam, in case you weren't already aware how amazing their food is, it's on your radar. You're going to start thinking about doing a trip there. And I think this is a great country a lot of people have not yet explored. Post-pandemic, it's open again. It's wonderful. I'm actually going back this fall. So you can tell I'm excited to keep eating there and keep exploring more. And I think more people should do it. We know that people travel for food. How many people are planning their dining reservations at Noma before it closed, way far out, just to get a seat at that table? This is going to happen now in Vietnam as well. Elevation of dining standards, that too. It's going to bring those standards up. So right now we've got 4 one-star restaurants. I wonder how more we'll get and if we'll get 2 or 3-star restaurants eventually. Increased investment. Obviously, people are going to see that this is happening. They're going to put more money into this. This creates jobs. This is all awesome for Hanoi and Saigon. And what we really hope that happens is that expands out to some of the other cities as well. And then food. I mean, you've got chefs who have grown up in other places. When I was down at the Regent Phu Quoc, I had an incredible meal, and it was a young chef whose parents had taken him out of the country when he was quite young. He trained here in the US at Nobu, and now he's coming back to his home country to really showcase his skills and make a name for himself. So I think it's going to bring chefs back to Vietnam, which is going to create really more interesting food as well, because it's not just the local flavors, but it's what they've learned elsewhere. Yes, chef to that. Now, what's bad? I mean, there are some downsides. Certainly, this is, right now, a little bit of the limited representation. You've got mostly just these really high-end restaurants. Those aren't for everybody in the sense of budget, right? But also, do we want to eat really fancy all the time? Not really. So I'm glad there's representation of those local ones and the more street food. Those aren't going to be the starred ones. And financial pressure, somebody gets a star or they're trying to get a star, they're going to spend more money. This is like that chef level of stress. And how does it impact the local cuisine? Do people stop doing the street food and try to get that star by going fancier? I don't think that's going to happen in the sense of we lose out on lots of great street food. And certainly as a restaurant owner or as a chef, you might start thinking like, what should I be doing? I'm a little bit more stressed about this. I'm putting more pressure on myself or on my bank account to try to get that star. And pricing concerns, right? They show up, that you get a star, places that were affordable, maybe to locals or to travelers not on a super high budget. They go up, 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 and it ends up being pricier. Overall, though, I mean, this is obviously a fantastic thing for Vietnam. I also think you look at Europe, where Michelin has been for so long, these restaurants do tend to be pretty formal, multi-course tasting meals. And you go to Vietnam and you can try a little bit of that, but also you have great recommendations for the other spots to try out. Now, a bit about Fora and Vietnam, because again, like I said, this was a destination that it was not such a big place. Part of that is the pandemic. But as it started opening, we right now have 57 trips booked to Vietnam, which is super cool. If you're talking about Hanoi and Saigon, a couple of our favorite hotels, Park Hyatt Saigon, totally fantastic pick. Capella Hanoi is so stylish. Love that hotel. But you're not going to go and only be in the cities. So let's talk about where you'd go outside of the cities, where there also is great food, just not yet in the Michelin Guide. So Regent Phu Quoc, this is actually the relaunch of the Regent brand, which was taken over by AHG. It is so spectacular. And that was where I met that young chef and had one of the best meals like ever. Also go up north. Make sure you spend some time in Da Nang. Da Nang, the Intercon Da Nang. This is one of the most gorgeously designed hotels I've ever seen. Bill Bensley, he is a genius. You've got Da Nang as a bigger city to explore. There's great night markets. And then you can go down to Hoi An to do custom tailored clothing, just a super chic little town. And then Six Senses and Amman, incredible beach resorts to explore along the coast. So there's a lot to see, a lot to do, and mostly a lot to eat. Thank you so much for joining us on Speed Talking with Fora this week. Next week, the joys of domestic travel. So when you don't have the appetite for that really long flight to Vietnam, let's talk about what you can do closer to home. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't travel too far before hitting follow and subscribe. Check in next week for the newest episode of Speed Talking with Fora, and our take on what's currently happening in the wild world of travel.